on any kind of variation, not just only on direct and direct square variation. So in order for us to solve any kind of variation in a systematic manner, so we are going to apply certain steps. Good day to all of you, my dear students. Unang araw ng pasukan ng taong 2021. Hindi ba kayo excited? So let's start this year na masaya tayong lahat. At excited, syempre. Di ba? So kailangan ganun tayo para buong taon masaya tayo. So coming from a holiday season, let's go back to work and let's go back to reality. So ito na yung pagpapatuloy nyo na yung pag-aaral ninyo. So also, this first day of lesson after the holiday season, ito yung start also ng second grading period. So, kung ano yung mga pagkukulang na hindi nyo nagawa, pagkukulang na nagawa na nyo nung first grading period, so sana mapunan nyo na this second grading period at sa mga susunod pang grading periods. So that syempre ang goal lagi dapat natin, di ba? Hindi mapababa yung grade natin, dapat mas mapataas pa natin yun. So magagawa natin yun if we are going to continue to work hard. So dapat mag-work hard tayo, alam dapat natin kung ano yung mga kailangan natin gawin, alam dapat natin yung mga kailangan nating accomplish. It's just a matter of doing things na kailangan yung gawin as a student. So, do your part because we teachers are doing our part. So, ano nga ba yung first lesson natin for the second grading period? So, yung second grading period natin, we are going to discuss another chapter of our lesson in mathematics. And this chapter will focus on discussing the things that we have to know about variation. So dito, we are going to study the different kinds of variation and answering examples with those kinds. So ano nga ba yung una natin pag-aaralan about variation? So as our lesson number 1 for the second grading period, so we are going to discuss direct variation and direct square variation. Uunahin natin yung first kind of variation. And the direct square variation is just under the direct variation. So that's also direct variation. Yun nga lang, it already involves exponent. So that's why we will also include direct square variation as our lesson number 1. So before we proceed on answering examples about direct variation, of course, it would be best if we are going to define first terms that we needed in order to understand more clearly the lesson that we are going to tackle today. So ano ba yung una nating i-define? So first thing, the first term to define is the word variation. So ano nga ba yung tawag nating variation? So variation means, sabi dito, variation is one of the most important and useful ideas in mathematics. So bakit ba nasabi isa yung variation isa sa most important and useful ideas in mathematics? Do you have any idea about that? Well, maybe because maraming gamit in real life yung variation. Well, sa mga ginagawa natin, hindi natin nalalaman that we are already using variation. So, mas malilinawan kayo pag discuss na natin yung different kinds of variation. But ano ba yung sabi about variation? Ano pa yung ibang sabi about variation? Sabi dito, in variation, the idea that two variables may be related to each other in such a way that if one quantity increases or decreases, the other quantity also increases or decreases in a definite way. So, pwedeng in one quantity increases, the other quantity also increases. Whether one quantity increases, the other quantity decreases. Or vice versa. So, pwedeng ganun. So, may naiisip ba kayo ng mga real life situations wherein nagagamit yung variation? Pwedeng sabihin natin yung law of supply and demand, di ba? Pag maraming supply, konti yung demand. Di ba? Pag konti yung supply, marami naman yung demand. Yeah, or pag marami yung supply, yun yung isang way na in real life na nagagamit natin yung variation. So talking about variation, so there is one important thing na kailangan natin tandaan when we are solving variation, and that is the constant of variation, or yung tinatawag natin constant of proportionality rather. And it is denoted by the symbol small letter k. So we call that as the constant of variation or constant of proportionality. So that k in variation is very important. It is not like other things na more specifically in translation na kapag translate natin siya, direct translation mo kuha natin. Ito, even though you will not see na minention yung constant of variation or yung constant of proportionality, but once we translate statement into symbols, makita natin doon sa translation niya yung K. So, yun yung mahalaga in variation. So, dapat when we translate statement, we have to include yung K in its translation. So, what else? Sabi nga natin, ano rin kailangan pag-aralan today? Yung first kind of variation, which is yung tinatawag natin direct variation. So, ano ba yung direct variation this time? So, we define direct variation as direct variation tells that if one quantity increases or decreases, the other quantity also increases or decreases. So, ganun daw yung direct variation. Yung isang quantity, for example, if you do have a table of values, kung sa table of values mo, yung sa values ng x ay pataas, tapos yung values ng y ay pataas din, then we are pertaining to direct variation with regards to that table of values. Kapag ang values of x mo ng pababa, the values of y ay pababa din, so we are also pertaining to direct variation. So, ganun yung ano natin, yung tinatawag natin direct variation. So, indirect variation, sabi dito, the ratio of two quantities is constant. Diba, may binanggit tayo kanina, the constant of variation. So, when we are talking about direct variation, so sabi dito, the ratio of two quantities is the constant of variation. When we say ratio, we are pertaining to the operation division, or we are pertaining to a fraction. So, when we divide the two quantities, when we are talking about direct variation, that is its constant of variation. So later on, you'll find out kung paano ba natin nakukuha yung tinatawag natin constant of variation, or paano natin pinoform yung way in order for us to find out for the constant of variation. Next, indirect variation, very easy to identify that we are dealing with direct variation because it uses the statements like varies directly as or directly proportional to. So in the statement of it pa lang, so alam mo na what kind of variation is you are solving. So if you've seen varies directly as or directly proportional to, so that means we are pertaining to direct variation. So it would be best or mas maganda if the given problem is written in that way. Written in the way wherein we can right away easily identify the kind of variation so that we can solve a problem involving uh, variation, any kind of variation. Kasi may mga problems tayo na, ano eh, you are going to think of a certain kind of variation, kung ano bang kind yun. Kasi in a problem, wala siyang nakikitang word. Yung words na magbibigay sa atin ng clue na we are pertaining to that specific kind of variation. So basta pag nakita ninyo yung state words like varies directly as or directly proportional to, we are pertaining to direct variation. So ayun yung direct variation. Ano naman yung direct square variation? Sinabi natin kanina, this is under direct variation. Nga, it already involves exponent. So pag sinabi natin direct square variation, it relates one variable to a power, relates one variable rather to a power of another variable. So with the word power, that means we are pertaining to an exponent. So in direct square variation, the ratio of one quantity and the square of other quantity is constant. So pinagkaiba lang yun dun sa direct variation when we are going to find for the constant of variation is that the other quantity is that we are going to divide one quantity to the square of the other quantity. So ganun yung direct square variation. But the way of getting its constant of variation are just the same. Okay. So sinabi natin, pinagkaiba lang niya, yung other quantity niya has square. Then, in direct square variation, it uses the statements like varies directly as the square of and directly proportional to the square of. So, doon pa lang sa statements niya, malalaman nyo na that the problem is about direct square variation. Direct square variation, it's because the word square is there. But it's not necessarily mean na panakita natin yung word na square is direct square variation na yun. Kasi there are other kinds of variation na gumagamit din ng word na square. So, pag nakita natin siya together with the word direct, that means we are pertaining to direct square variation. So now, ang question natin now is, how are we going to solve for direct and direct square variation or any kind of variation na may encounter natin, i-discuss natin, paano ba natin siya isosolve? So, how are we going to solve a problem involving any kind of variation? So, in order for us to do that in a systematic manner, so it would be better if you're going to make use of certain steps. Or no, not yet. We're not yet on the steps that we need to apply in order for us to solve direct any kind of variation. So let's proceed first on statements of variation, then translating it into symbols so that you'll know on how to translate statements of variation of direct and direct square into symbols. So unahin natin, number one, y varies directly as x. So that y varies directly as x, we call that as the statement of variation. So yun yung unang-una natin kailangan hanapin when we are solving any kind of variation. So we have to find out first the statement of variation, because that statement of variation will help us in order for us to form the equations that we needed that will help us in order for us to solve a given problem involving any kind of variation. So here, since we are dealing with direct and direct square variation, so mga statements of variation na ma-encounter natin dito are for those statements involving direct and direct variation. So unahin natin, y varies directly as x. So when you translate that statement of variation into symbols, ako kasi may dalawa akong translation for that. So it's either you translate it, you have to translate it on both ways. So una, you have to translate it directly just how we read it. Then the other one is to translate it in terms of constant of variation or in terms of K. So if you're going to translate it translate it directly as the way we read it. So sabi doon, y varies directly as x. Of course, the first variable being mentioned, ayun yung nasa left side of the equation. Then the second variable, ayun yung nasa right side of the equation. So if you are going to translate that statement of variation into symbols, that will be the same as y is equal to ks. So look at the y, the first variable being mentioned, that is on the left side. And on the right side, that is the variable, the second variable being mentioned. And take a look at this. The k is there, even though we did not see k in the statement of variation. So once we translate it into symbols, k is there. Yun yung importante, the most important thing in variation. So when you translate it involving K already. So why varies directly? I guess that word varies directly as yun yung represent ng K. Sa akin na, but if again, when you translate that statement into symbols, even though if we did not mention K, still when we translate it, a K is there. So y varies directly as x. So that would be y is equal to kx. And it's just direct translation of it. Just how we read it. So this y equals to kx. That's the first translation. Then the second translation is the translation of it in terms of k. So we have k there. So sabi nga natin nung kanina, when we define direct variation, sabi doon, indirect variation, the ratio of the two quantities is constant. What is that constant that we are pertaining to? That is the constant of variation, which is denoted by the symbol k. So in order for us now to find for the value of k, so we just have to get the ratio of the two quantities. Paano yung ratio nun? Again, kung ano yung unang binanggit nating variable, ayun yung nasa numerator, the other variable is on the denominator. So it will be like this. So to find for the value of k, so k is equal to y over x. So madali lang, di ba? Kung ano yung unang binanggit, ayun yung nasa numerator, yung pangalawang binanggit na variable is on the denominator part. So that's how we translate that statement of variation into symbols. So mas maganda if you're going to do both translations. Kasi that translations will help us as we solve a problem involving uh, any kind of variation, or in that case, we are solving here direct and direct square variation. Let's try another one. So sabi dito, A is directly proportional to B. If you're going to translate it into symbols, yung direct translation niya, that will be the same as A is equal to KB. Look at that. A is on the left side while B is on the right side, together with K. Then, if you're going to translate it in terms of K, of course, the first variable being mentioned is on the numerator, then the other variable is on the denominator. So that would be K is equal to A over B. So that's how we translate involving direct variation. How about if it involves direct square variation? Sabi nga natin, since direct square variation is under direct variation, kung paano natin tinatranslate yung direct variation, ganun din ito translate ang direct square variation. So paano? So y varies directly as the square of x. At ibahan nga lang niya, it already involves exponent. So y varies directly as the square of x. If we're going to translate it the same way as we read it, so that will be the same as y is equal to kx squared. X squared siya, it's because of the word square of x. So, and if you are going to translate it in terms of k, of course, ganun pa rin. The ratio of one quantity over the ratio of the first and the square of the other quantity. That would be k is equal to y over x squared. So that's how we translate statement of variations involving direct square variation. Another one, A is directly proportional to the square of B. Parang ganun din lang din kanina sa atin eh. Yun nga lang, dinadagal lang natin ng word na square. Pero yung translation niya is the same way on how we translate direct variation. So ano yung first translation niya? It should be A is equal to KB squared. Because of it's B squared, it's because of the word square of B. And for us to find for the value of K, that would be K is equal to A over B squared. So again, in variation, it's very important that we correctly translate the statement of variation into symbols. At mas maganda rin if you're going to translate it on both ways. Such as translate it the same way as we read it and translate it also on in terms of K or the constant of variation. Because again, that will help us in order for us to solve a problem involving direct and direct square variation or any other kinds of variation. And also, since we already know on how to translate statement of variation into symbols, it's about time now that we are going to solve for an example involving direct and direct square variation. So in solving for any examples of any kind of variation, it would be better if we are going to apply, if we are going to do it systematically. So it would be best or better if we are going to apply certain steps. Just like the other discussions that we have, so the steps that we are going to follow on solving any kind of variation, these steps are applicable on any kind of variation, not just only on direct and direct square variation. So in order for us to solve any kind of variation in a systematic manner, so we are going to apply certain steps na this time tatawagin natin sa acronym or word na LIFE. Bakit nga ba life yan? Ano ba pinatutong? Ano ba yung life? Buhay. So, ang gusto ko ng patungkulan dito is that you should know on how to tawag dito, on how to take good care of your life. So, alam naman natin, iisa lang ang buhay natin. Hindi tayo pusa, sinasabing may 9 lives. Hindi tayo isang character sa mga online games na kapag namatay ka, mabubuhay ka ulit. Hindi tayo immortal na na pag namatay, again, mabubuhay. So, we only have one life. So, make the most of it. So, dapat every day of your life, you have to make it productive, as productive as possible. So, maybe it's about time for you to do things things which are right or things which are good. So, maybe it's about time to make up your mind on the things na ginawa mo na hindi maganda. Just remember na ang buhay ay saglit lang. So because we'll never know kung mabubuhay pa ba tayo kinabukasan o sa susunod na araw. Dapat pinagpapasalamat natin every time nagigising tayo sa umaga. Pasalamat tayo that we still have another day na binigay sa atin to enjoy life para encounter natin yung mga bagay, mga magagandang bagay na pwede natin ma-encounter sa mundo. And of course, alam ko, mga bata pa kayo, so you are trying things na gusto nyo mag-try ng lahat ng bagay. But since you're old enough and you know you are already a thinking individual, so alam nyo na dapat kung ano yung mga tama at mali. So do the right thing. Yun ang dapat natin isipin lagi. Because isipin natin, abot pa ba ako in the future? Di ba? Ma-achieve ko pa kaya yung mga gusto kong ma-achieve sa buhay ko? Di ba? Isipin mo lagi yun. So sinabi nga, di ba, mayroon tayo na carpe diem. Ang ibig sabihin ay seize the day. So gawin mong makabuluhan yung buhay mo. Gawin mong kapaki-pakinabang. So, enjoy life. Yung mga problema, darating at darating yan. Pero, if you are going to face it, so malulutas at malulutas yan. Just think positive. Alamin nyo lagi yung kailangan nyo. Mag-focus kayo on the things that you want to achieve in life. Kasi hindi mo naman alam kung ma-achieve mo pa yan eh. Basta focus ka doon. Then, siguro, God will give you a long life for that. So, di ba? So, dapat pangalagaan natin yung buhay natin. Huwag natin sayangin bawat araw na binibigay sa atin. So, make our life productive, just like what I mentioned earlier. So, every day na nabubuhay tayo, gawa tayo ng mabuti. Di ba? Yung mga hindi natin nagagawa before, pwede naman natin yung gawin now eh. Di ba? Ultimo yung yung simple way of throwing your balat ng candy into the garbage. Isang way na yun na paggawa ng maganda, paggawa ng makabuluhan sa buhay mo. Yung you are not just throwing it everywhere. Yung maghahanap ka pa rin ng basurahan or yung tamang atapunan ng balat ng candy na yun. So in that way, nagawa ka ng isang maganda sa buhay. So dapat ang isip natin every day, ano ba yung nagawa kong maganda? So ganun dapat tayo. Even though may nagawa tayong hindi maganda for that day, pero dapat let's make it to a point na meron dapat tayo nagagawang kapaki-pakinabang sa bawat araw na nabubuhay ka. And don't forget to thank God for that, na binibigyan pa niya ng pagkakataon ng another day for you to live, for you to experience what you have to experience in life. So, yun yung message natin doon sa steps na tinatawag natin life, ang steps natin in solving for any kind of variation. So, this lesson about variation, so magsasawa kayo dito on the word life. Kasi pinapaalala nung lesson natin about variation, na you have to always take good care of your life. So ano nga ba yung life na yan as our steps in solving variation? So let's start with the first one, L. L stands for let's translate statement of variation into symbols. Ganyan yung ginawa natin kanina. So the first thing you're going to do is to locate the statement of variation. So after finding that statement of variation, translate it in both ways. Sinabi natin na mas maganda if you're going to translate it in both ways. Yung translating it the way as we read it, and the other one is translating it in terms of K. So that's the first thing we are going to do. Bakit? Sinabi natin. Because those two equations na ma-form natin will help us in solving thoroughly what we need to solve in the given problem about certain kind of variation. So I stands for its constant of variation should be sought. So we are now going to find for the constant of variation. So, iba dalawa yung nakuha nating equation when we translate the statement of variation. Yung pangalawang equation na kuha natin, yun yung equation na gagamitin for us to find out for the value of k. So we are going to use of it to find for the constant of variation. Then after that, F will follow. F stands for form the equation of variation. So we do have here what we call equation of variation. Ano ba equation na sinasabi natin equation of variation? That is the equation involving already the constant of variation. So, the second step, nakuha mo na yung constant of variation. Then, once you already have the constant of variation, you can now form the equation of variation by using the first equation that you form. Ano ba yung first equation mo? Yung translation niya the way as you read it. Yun yung first equation na translate natin yung i-substitute natin yung value of k. So for us to form the equation of variation. Because the equation that we will form on the third step, that is to be used on answering what is asked in the problem about variation. According to the last step, sabi dito, equation form should be used in solving for the unknown. So, nakuha natin equation, na-form natin equation on step number 3, that is for us to be used, that's for us to use it in solving for what is unknown in the given problem about variation. So, all we have to do, in order for us to solve any kind of variation, this is for any kind of variation, all we have to do is to apply the steps that we call life. So, bawat sinusolve natin yung variation, makikita natin doon yung word na life. Always na pinapaalala sa inyo ang kahalagahan ng buhay. So, since we already have the steps, so let us now apply these steps through examples. So let's have example number 1 here. So the first example, if y varies directly as x and x is equal to 5 when y is equal to 25, find y when x is equal to 15. So the first thing we are going to do is to find out for the statement of variation. Nasa ba statement of variation natin dyan? Ang statement of variation natin dyan ay y varies directly as x. So, kasi yun yung start natin. We have to find out first the statement of variation. Because from that statement of variation, dun mag-i-start yung lahat na kailangan natin para ma-solve natin what is asked in the problem about that kind of variation. In this case, we are solving here direct variations because according to the statement, y varies directly as x. So, let's translate. Let's translate first using the first step, that statement of variation, into symbol. So, y varies directly as x. The first translation will be the way as we read it. That would be y is equal to kx. And the other translation is its translation in terms of k. And it will be the ratio of the two quantities. Kung ano yung unang binanggit, nasa numerator, yung pangalawang binanggit, nasa denominator. That would be k is equal to y over x. That is the first step. Then using the second step, sabi dito, its k should be solved. So, two formulas yung nakuha natin sa first step natin. Yung pangalawang nakuha natin formula which is equated into k, that is to be used in solving for the value of k, or the what we call constant of variation. And the first complete values in the given problem are to be used as in order for us to find out for the value of k. Sabi dito, particularly ito, x is equal to 5 when y is equal to 25. These values of x and y are to be used for us to find for the value of k. All we have to do is to substitute it to that equation. So, pag sinubstitute natin yan, that will be the same as 25. K is equal to 25, the value of y, over 5. And simplifying it, that would be k is equal to 5. Then after that, since we already have the constant of variation, it's about time now that we are going to form the equation of variation. This time, we're going to make use of this, yung first equation that we formed. In place of k there, we will replace it by the value of k, which is 5. So sabi ko, substitute 5 to y is equal to kx. That y is equal to kx, that is the first equation that we formed when we translate the statement of variation. So pag sinubstitute natin yung 5 in place of k, it will be the same as y is equal to 5x. That y is equal to 5x, yan yung tinatawag natin na equation of variation. Next, last step, E. E, sabi natin nung kanina, equation form is to be used for us to find for the unknown. Ang unknown natin dito, find y when x is equal to 15. So this equation that we form on step number 3, so using that, we are going to solve for what is unknown in the problem. The unknown is y, so it was already equated into y when x is equal to 15. Substitute lang natin yung value ng x na 15 here, so we'll come up with y is equal to 5 times 15, and 5 times 15 is equal to 75. So that's how we answer an example involving direct variation. Ano ba ulit yung direct? As one quantity increases or decreases, the other quantity also increases or decreases. Dapat parehas silang, as one increases, the other increases. As one decreases, one quantity decreases, the other decreases. Tingnan natin. X is 5 and x is 15. So 5, 15, pataas yung x niya. So dapat pataas din yung y. So ang y niya 25, yung una, yung pangalawa is 75. So we are really solving the what we call direct variation. So any questions so far on example number 1? So if none, so let's proceed on answering more examples. Let's have another example. Example number 2 here. Example number 2, the problem is if y varies directly as the square of x and x is equal to 3 when y is equal to 27, find y when x is equal to 6. So this time the problem is about direct square variation. So the first thing we're going to do is to look for the statement of variation, and the statement of variation there is y varies directly as the square of x. Even though the problem is about direct square variation, so wala tayong problem on translating it because it's just like how we translate direct variation. Ang kaibahan nga lang niya again is that the other quantity has a square. Okay. So, using the first step, let's first translate that statement of variation into symbols. Let's have the first translation, the translation on the same way as we read it. So, y varies directly as the square of x. It will be as y is equal to kx squared. Then for the value for its translation in terms of k, so it should be the ratio of one quantity and the square of the other quantity. It should be, kung ano yung unang binanggit, again, nasa numerator, yung pangalawa, nasa denominator. Yung nga lang, pangalawa, square nun. That should be k is equal to y over x squared. And since we formed two equations there, the second equation form is to be used for us to find for the constant of variation. So, this equation, yung pangalawa, lagi yan yung pangalawa, yung gagamitin sa second step. Pangalawang equation form, gagamitin sa second step. Then, yung unang complete value in the problem are to be used for us to find for k. Sabi dito, x is equal to 3 when y is equal to 27. So, if we're going to translate that, or to substitute that, we come up with y, which is 27, over x is 3, squared of it. So 3 squared will be 9. Then simplifying it, 27 divided by 9 is equal to 3. So the constant of variation is 3. So this time, applying the third step, yung f natin, using this equation, yung first form equation, first translation natin. So using that, substitute lang natin yung value ng k to that form, to that equation, first form equation. So we'll come up with y is equal to 3x squared as what we call as the equation of variation. And lastly, we are now about to answer what is asked in the problem. So we are here, find y, sabi dito, find y when x is equal to 6. Again, using that new form equation in third step. Ito yon. So gagamitin mo na yun ngayon. So for you to find out for what is asked in the problem. We are going to find for y. So it was already equated into y. Substitute lang natin yung value ng x which is 6. When we do that, we'll come up with y is equal to 3. Ito yon times 36. Bakit naging 36? Because x is 6. And 6 squared, that would be 6 times 6. That would be 36. And 36 times 3 now, it will be equal to 108. So the value of y that we are looking for in problem number 2 is 108. So did you get example number 2? So let's try another example. Let's have example number 3 here. So the problem is, if C is directly proportional to D and C is equal to 36 when D is equal to 9, find D when C is equal to 64. Again, let's find out for the statement of variation. So the statement of variation there is C is directly proportional to D. So that is to be used for us to form two equations that we needed in order for us to solve what is asked in the problem. So let's translate it first the way as we read it. C is directly proportional to D. That would be C is equal to KD. And for us to find for another equation, which is in terms of K, so we have to get the ratio of the two quantities. So yung unang binanggit sa numerator, yung pangalawa ay the denominator. So we do have K is equal to C over D. And second, using the second form equation, K is equal to C over D. So, and also using a complete value in the problem of value of C and D, we are going to find for the value of K. So substituting it, we come up with C, which is equal to 36 over 9, which is the value of D. So 36 divided by 9, that would be 4. So the value of K there is 4. Then using step number 3, so since you already have the value of K, and using the first form equation na C is equal to KD, so substitute lang yung 4 na yon. So it will become C is equal to 4D for us to form the equation of variation. And using that new form equation na C is equal to 4D, ito again again ulitin natin yung kung ano yung mag-form yung equation on the third step that is to be used on the last step. So C is equal to 4D. So what we are looking for is find D when C is equal to 64. Again, this time D is what we are looking for when C is equal to 64. So what we are going to do is just simply substitute it. So pag sinubstitute natin yan, magiging 64 because C is 64. That 64 is equal to 4D. Then simplifying it, since we are looking for D, so we have to divide both sides of the equation by 4 for us to find out for the value of D. So 64 divided by 4 will come up with, so that will happen. 64 divided by 4 will come up with D, which is equal to 16. So the value of D is 16. So did you get example number 3? Hopefully this time nakuha na natin para the more na mas nakuha natin, the more na mas madadalian tayo on solving for the other examples. So let's try another example. Number 4. Example number 4. Sabi dito, if A is directly proportional to the square of B and A is equal to 24 when B is equal to 2, find A when B is equal to 3. So let's look for a statement of variation. The statement of variation is A is directly proportional to the square of B. So using the first step, so let's translate that statement of variation into symbols. First translation, the same way as we read it. That would be A is directly proportional to the square of B. That would be A is equal to KB squared. Then the other translation is its translation in terms of K. That would be K is equal to A over B squared. Unang variable is A, yung pangalawa is on the denominator. Yung A, yung nasa numerator. And the square of B, kaya may square yung B natin dyan. Then using the second form equation, ito, let's find out for K using a complete value of A and B in the problem. So A is 24, using A is 24 and B is equal to 2. Substituting it, we come up with A is 24 here, then B squared, and B is 2, and 2 squared is 4. And 24 divided by 4 is 6. Since we already have, again, the value of K, let's substitute that value of K using this first form equation. So using A is equal to KB squared, substitute it, you'll have A is equal to 6B squared. In that way, we form what we call equation of variation. Then using the last step, using that form equation in the third step, so we are now going to solve what is asked in the problem. So we are here going to find A when B is 3. So since it was already equated to A, so mas madali na lang. So substitute, A is equal to 6 times B. B is 3. And B squared yun. So that should be 3 squared. So it will be equal to 9. And 6 times 9 is equal to 54. So the value of A, or the one we are looking for in the problem, is equal to 54. So that's how we answer example number 4. So hopefully nakuha na natin yon. Let's find out if there's another example or still have another example. So para mas maintindihan nyo na mas mabuti. So the more example you answer, the more na mas nalalaman natin on how are we going to solve. How are you going to solve for a certain problem? So sample number 5. If W varies directly as V and W is equal to 105 when V is equal to 5, find W when V is equal to 8. So using, let's find out first for the statement of variation, because that statement is to be used in applying the first step. So something, translate it into symbols. W varies directly as V. So first translation niya ay W is equal to KV. Then its translation in terms of K, that would be K is equal to WV. Then using second form equation of K is equal to W over V. So, and also using a complete value of W and V in the problem, substitute it, we come up with 105 over 5. So K is equal to 105 over 5. So divide it, we'll come up with K, which is equal to 21. Then, using that K, the value of K na 21, substitute it to the first form equation of W is equal to KB. So we'll come up with W is equal to 21V. And the last, using that new form equation na W is equal to 21V, let's find out now what is asked in the problem. So find W when V is equal to 8. Substitute lang natin. W is equal to 21 times V, which is 8. And 21 times 8 is equal to 168. So that's how we answer example number 5. Hope you already got on how to solve direct and direct square variation. So let's try example number 6. If I'm not mistaken, this is already the last example. So example number 6, sabi dito, if z varies directly as the square of y and y is equal to 4 when z is equal to 48, find z when y is equal to 7. So hanapin ulit yung statement of variation because that statement, yun yung gagamitin for us to apply the first step. So apply the first step, is, ano natin, i-translate natin yung statement of variation into symbol. Z varies directly as the square of y. It will be Z is equal to ky squared. That's the square of y, kaya may y squared tayo. In terms of k, yung Z is the numerator, then y squared is on the denominator. We come up with k is equal to Z over y squared. And using the second step, applying the second step using the second form equation of k is equal to z over y squared, and also a complete value of the y and z in the problem. So let's find out for the constant of variation. So substitute natin. So ang z is equal to 48 over ang y is 4. Ay squared yon. So that would be 4 squared, which is equal to 16. So 48 divided by 16, that would be 3. So, since you already have the constant of variation, you can now form the equation of variation because you're just going to substitute that 3 to the first form equation na z is equal to ky squared. So, when we substitute it, we'll come up with y, that would be z, typographical error. In terms of, in place of y here, uh, replace it by z. It should be z is equal to 3y squared. And last, using the new form equation in the third step, ito, it should be z, z. So tama na siya dito. Z is equal to 3y squared. So find z daw when y is equal to 7. Substitute lang natin. Z is equal to 3 here. Then y is equal to 7. 7 squared, come up with 49. And 3 times 49, we come up with y is equal to 147. So that's how we answer example number 6. Hopefully, naintindihan na natin on how to solve problems involving direct and direct square variation. Madali lang yan as long as tama yung pagta-translate natin, because once your translation is correct, the rest will follow. So, you are just going to use that translation na ginawa natin on the first step, then the rest will follow. So, ganun lang on how we solve direct and direct square variation. So, hopefully, naintindihan na ng lahat. So, that would be all